Instruction, assessment, instruction. This cycle is an ongoing process of evaluating student progress and refining the lesson, of communicating with students and guiding them along, of encouraging them to strive for excellence once they know the criteria. A teacher's goal is to actively involve students in their own learning, in their own assessment, and help them appreciate their journey of achievement. Using daily assessment as a tool for gauging the effectiveness of instruction has not always been the norm. For many years, assessment and instruction were compartmentalized. There was instruction time and test time. Day after day, teachers stood at the front of the room lecturing to their classes. Every so often, the students took a test. We know now that integrating the two functions improves both teaching and learning.
And you're going to look at that rubric and you're going to say, do I have all of the things in my written explanation that make this a 4? Okay?
And where the instruction and the assessment begin to intertwine is as we have conversations about the work that students produce. We have conversations about looking at models of excellence, and together we try to define the features of what quality looks like.
I like how you analyzed his and said, this is why. And it doesn't matter if it's short as long as it's accurate, right, and complete.
What do you use this type of calculator for?
Education is no longer focused on what the teacher is teaching, but on what the student is learning. Assessment is our means of discovery and the impetus to refine our lessons.
And we all know the cliche about the sage on the stage versus the guide on the side. And here in Pendelco, we're trying to really focus on what the students are doing and talk to them about their learning and help them understand that they're the most important component.
For this video series, we visited Coburn Elementary School and Northley Middle School in southeastern Pennsylvania, and Eleanor Roosevelt High School in suburban Washington, D.C.
For example, the Dutch and Portuguese worked to exclude company members from the East Indies. And we all figured out the eclipse. How was it that we figured out?
The teachers discuss how they design assessments for their classes,
From there, you're going to read the article and take notes.
which assessments they find most effective, and how they use assessments to guide instruction.
So assessment comes from a Latin root which means to sit with. And when we talk about assessment in the classroom, we're talking about sitting with the student work. And that idea of sitting with the work and seeing what it says about that student is what assessment is about. It's different from evaluation, which is then giving a certain value to that work. That's when I have to name it a C or number it a 75. And the two acts are quite separate and I think have very different purposes in the classroom.
What more do you think you need to do on this topic?
I think it's just we need to touch up on a few more things, like present times, like we found a few articles on the internet.
The purpose of assessment, ultimately, is to help students improve their work.
I like how you sounded that out.
Eleanor Roosevelt High School is the second largest high school in Maryland. Located just outside Washington, D.C., Roosevelt is a magnet school for science and technology. On any day, the classrooms here display a multiplicity of assessments. Assessment expert Richard Stiggins identifies 4 basic assessment methods: selected response, which includes multiple choice, true, false, and short answer tests; essay, calling for an original written answer; performance assessment; and personal communication, one of the most common ways teachers gather information.
So let's begin with the presentations, again on new imperialism.
Today, World Studies teacher Marcus Lindo uses performance assessment and personal communication in assessing students.
What new ideas did you learn from this research?
Many people send children in to find diamonds. It's really dangerous and it leaves a lot of children wounded, so a lot of people are boycotting it. I like to learn more about that.
We realized like the bad effects that imperialism can have on other countries. Like the British became involved with opium trading with China.
But there also were like positive effects because there were a lot of missionaries that went to India and they told them about like the medical care and the
advancement of technology.
Troy Bradberry teaches English.
Why doesn't Scout fight Cecil Jacobs?
She didn't fight Cecil Jacobs because Atticus told her not to.
His preferred method of assessment is communication between teacher and student and among students themselves.
Atticus tells him that when children ask questions, tell them what it means. Don't just hide it from them.
Do you guys agree with that as kids?
Yes, no.
I remember being in school. I learned more from my friends sometimes than I did the teachers. So I let them talk to each other. Let them figure it out. And they tend to figure it out. And it's great to watch.
As Mr. Bradberry listens and observes his class, he's actively tuning into the assessment clues that students provide through their comments. His questions purposefully lead the class in the direction he wants them to go.
What is the great equalizer in America? Who thinks they have it? Russ?
Government is the great equalizer in America because they keep things in order.
I disagree with what Russell was saying because, like, the government, it doesn't always, like, it's like their standards are fit for, like you were saying, Protestant white people.
Teachers need to give students a chance to try to connect new knowledge and new concepts and new ideas that they're trying to get across to experiences that the students have already had. And I think a big part of the kinds of questions that teachers might ask would be to help students to begin to make those connections.
I think that, like, education is something that equalizes because although not everybody might not be able to get the same level of education, they still have somewhat of an opportunity to be able to learn.
Theoretically, education should be the great equalizer because we're all supposed to have the same opportunities in education. But in reality, you have private schools and you have public schools. So if you have rich parents, you generally get a little better education than others. And
You look at the students. Are they engaged in what they're doing? Are they bored? How are they sitting? What do they look like? Do they look like they're going to sleep? It either means that the lesson was too easy. They don't care. That means the lesson might be bad.
For Mr. Bradberry, observation plays a key role in assessing and modifying daily lessons. Sensing that students are beginning to lose interest, Mr. Bradberry makes a change.
What I really liked is the bottom of 88.
If something doesn't work for me, I automatically go back to the book.
You know what's going to happen as well as I do, Jack, and I hope and pray I can get Jem and Scout through it without bitterness. And most of all, without catching Macomb's usual disease. I like what she says there. Remember we talked about diction before? A little bit of diction, author's word choice. Could she have just said racism there instead of usual disease? That's diction. She could have said racism, but she doesn't. She chooses better words that have a lot more implied meaning. That's the author's diction.
In addition to assessing his students through their daily participation in class, Mr. Bradberry gives a book test at the end of each reading assignment and assigns writing homework, including chapter notes that the students turn in weekly.
When you're actively involved in your reading, your comprehension goes way up. So I try to get them actively involved in the reading by asking themselves questions from the text as they're reading the text. And hopefully that works.
I can come up with an answer.
I think it just expands our horizons.
I want to know how you assess students on like a daily basis.
As a second-year teacher, Mr. Bradberry depends on his colleagues in the English department to share additional assessment techniques.
Well, I'm just thinking about my multi-level class. I had a very difficult time in getting them to do the assignments for homework, like if I give them ECR. So what I did was I broke it down into paragraphs, and I said you have to do paragraph 1 tonight, paragraph 2, and it goes step by step.
Okay.
And I found that that is working for me better than what I was doing before.
Well, I do sort of the in-between, like she has them read in front of the class. I put them in groups and have them do the group assessment, and they choose the one paper in the group, and then someone else reads the paper. Okay. They don't read their own paper, someone else reads it, and then we talk about why they have chosen this to be a 4 or a 3 or a 5 or whatever.
I find that when they read their writing and the other students grade them, they're harder on themselves than I would actually be, and they really know how to look at the different levels and decide whether this is good or whether this is a 4 or this is a 2 or a 1, and they're usually honest with each other.
Students get involved with assessment right from the beginning as they begin to sit with their own work or with their peers' work and begin to look at it together. and to see, what does this work tell me? What does this work demonstrate? What is there of quality? What do I like about this work? And the first stage of the student involvement is to be part of really naming the criteria that contribute to excellent work.
I'm always afraid of taking that one student who's really good and throwing them up in front of the class and saying, hey, listen to this, this is a great paper, and have them read that and then have other kids go, well, mine's not that good, I'm not, the whole self-esteem thing. See, are they going to rise to it if you do that, or are they going to go, well, my writing isn't that good?
Well, can you do sample papers?
Right.
And I think there are some samples in the actual thing from the county. There are some sample papers in there that you could either run off or put on an overhead, and then have one of them get on the overhead and describe how they could change that. Because kids are really good about seeing how others make mistakes.
It's the teacher's job first to create a culture in the classroom where quality is expected in everything that students do.
Yasmin, did you have a chance to look at Max?
And in order for that to happen, it has to feel safe.
Why he gave himself a 3, I think he should have got a 4, because it doesn't matter if his explanation is short or long. It just matters if the explanation makes sense.
For me to put my work out on the table and expect that I'm going to be getting feedback, and people are going to tell me things they like about it and things that could be done to improve it. But it can often be difficult, and students can be cruel. And so establishing an environment where that is a safe thing to do is an important job that the teacher has to guard.
I do that with peer editing. I pretty much choose the groups of peer editing. I say, okay, you two, I want you to work with him. You give your essay to that guy over there, that girl over there, and
I agree with
whoever
that.
needs help. And I've seen improvement in peer editing.
Yeah, because they can see each other's mistakes, and then it helps their own writing.
One of the most powerful techniques for really helping to improve work is teaching students how to give feedback to each other. And once they've had the experience of really looking at their own work and evaluating it according to this rubric, and once they really understand the criteria of what excellent work looks like, then they're able to begin to give some feedback to each other.
All right, you guys, this issue, I'm really proud of it. I think we did much better than last issue. We've gotten out closer to our deadline, and considering the picture problems that we had, I think we did a really good job.
Troy Bradberry teaches a journalism class where students produce the school's newspaper, the Eleanor Roosevelt Raider.
Page 5.
A performance-based assessment producing the newspaper requires students to demonstrate their mastery of journalism every month when they publish an issue. What the students do in class is part of a continual quest for mastery of the agreed-upon criteria for excellence.
All right, page 2, commentary.
The purpose of a school newspaper is to provide students a vehicle to get real experience about the mechanisms to produce a newspaper. Deadlines, articles that have to be done, layout, all those different things that you would do to produce the Washington Post and the New York Times.
I'm glad we had this article on top instead of the Bickham article.
I wanted to kind of hide it, even though, it's important, but that's not what should be like the main focus, I guess. And also,
The second thing that a newspaper provides is a vehicle by which students have an opportunity to express their viewpoints.
I thought it was kind of in bad taste that we had the whole sexual harassment issue on top of the bikini splash ad. Just kind of, it might have given the inference that people wearing bikinis and...
I don't think that anyone's going to be offended. I mean, it's a little bit strange, but it doesn't seem such a type of thing that someone would take offense at. If anything, it would be interpreted as just an irony.
Providing time to explore an issue in depth is one way Mr. Bradberry modifies his instruction. These discussions enable him to observe the student's depth of knowledge.
Kevin, Susie, did you think there was a problem with that?
No, that's fine. I didn't pick up on anything. We could have switched the ads around with the driving school and the bikini splash, but it doesn't really.
I don't think anyone's really going to draw a connection between them anyway. Like, I don't think it's offensive at all.
This is the embodiment of performance assessment. Applying what you've learned, be it through a science experiment, a discussion about books, or a debate about ad placement in a newspaper, and determining if the product that was created reflects a deep understanding of what was learned.
Second period, though, everybody was mesmerized in the second period. reading the paper, and everybody's reading, and they were all reading commentary. So is class going well this year? Do you think
Just as the students can contribute to one another's success, they can also contribute to their teacher's success. Mr. Bradberry finds that the best way to assess students on a daily basis is simply to ask them how well they are learning.
But are you learning stuff from the stuff we're reading?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, are we reading?
Yeah, because mostly our discussions they always end up tying in with the book or the poem that we read.
Everything we learn is applied.
Literally, I ask them, did you learn something today? And they go, no. Well, why not? And they'll tell you. It's boring. Oh. Well, how do you think we could make it better? Well, I think we should do this. Okay, well, let's try that. We don't give students enough credit.
What would you change if you guys could change something about the class?
I guess I would like to have more discussions, just because it's kind of like with your class, we've gotten a taste of it, but we can't have the entire meal.
What suggestions do you have for me to make the class better, or that I could do to make it better for you?
I wish we had a little bit more homework, because I get kind of lazy. Then when you give it to us, I'm like, homework. So I wish we had a little bit more.
Okay. A little bit more homework?
Yeah. Oh.
The only thing that really bothers me is just with the discussions, how a lot of times they just kind of fall flat on their face.
I have to take myself out of the equation and go, am I doing the right thing? Am I at the best I can be? And only when I'm at the best that I can be is when the students can be at their best.
Northley Middle School in Pennsylvania is surrounded by rolling hills and farmland and populated by families whose ties to the area go back generations.
So what we're doing today is thinking about...
Newer families come here to escape the hustle of nearby Philadelphia.
He was a leader because he helped them get through the hard times with the British.
Okay, boys and girls, you have your warm-up in front of you. I would like you to start by reading it. One person at your table, read it aloud.
Colleen Miller, a 6th grade math teacher at Northley, starts assessing her students on the first day of school.
The first week of school is an opportunity for me to get used to their learning styles as well as my teaching styles so that I can plan out my future for their 6th grade career. I start to see where they are mathematically as well as developmentally by giving them different activities, cooperative group activities, direct instruction activities that are related to concepts that they would have had in the elementary school.
Assessment at the outset of a unit is crucial. This assessment may be formal, such as a written test, or informal, such as a conversation. From the assessment data they gather, teachers know if their lesson starts at the right point for the class and who is most likely to need additional instruction.
What do you think, Mike?
They're easy.
Why are they easy?
Because all you gotta do is figure out the relationship between these two.
Okay. So what are you forming? What is he forming, Naveen?
Conclusion?
Conclusions. He is definitely drawing conclusions based on what part of the numerical expression? The solution, exactly. How does our calculator solve problems?
In this lesson, students use two different calculators, a mathematical calculator and a scientific calculator, to determine why it's important to follow an order of operations. Does it matter whether the calculator adds or multiplies first? Ms. Miller walks around the classroom while the students are working and asks them questions about their findings. Through observation and questioning, she can get a clear sense of whether the students understand the lesson.
And then that calculator must have taken their answer and multiplied it by 5. That gives me their answer.
Okay.
Yes.
But what is your answer?
My calculator.
It's important to check for understanding throughout a lesson to see if you are challenging all of the students and to see how I have to modify the instruction, either give them more risks to take or if I need to do a little bit more direct instruction with specific groups and how that should play out into the activity or the objective for the day. What would happen if I had my own symbols for division?
As principal of Northley Middle School, Ernest Angiolillo has had the opportunity to observe Ms. Miller in action.
We often say teaching is an art in that sense that teachers need to think on their feet a lot.
And this is exactly what you get when you tune into the students' assessment cues that they're giving you. Sometimes you may get the cue that this lesson is not working the way you intended it to. So you have to be able to think on your feet and move in a different direction. So what does that mean, the order of operations?
It's what order you would do your problems in.
Why wouldn't you do that problem right to left? What would happen if you did?
I think you would actually get the same answer.
Are you sure?
Yes.
How would you find out?
By trying it.
By trying it. It is a challenge for teachers to modify instruction when it appears to them that students are not achieving as well as they should be. What if everybody in the room had a totally different calculator? Would there be some importance to doing it the same way all the time?
If you use different calculators, you wouldn't get the same answers, and then everyone in the class wouldn't be on the same page as you.
Sometimes the temptation is to say, well, they're simply not studying hard enough, or they're not working hard enough, or they're not paying attention enough. And the challenge for a teacher is to go deeper.
What is the scientific calculator doing?
I'm not sure yet.
Okay, let's look at Casey's paper, because Casey had a...
Ms. Miller has several models for grouping her students. They may be grouped by leadership skills or ability level.
A teacher also has to accommodate all kinds of different learning styles and speeds in their room. So for some children, that means that I have to really slow down and make very explicit exactly what it is that is expected. And I may have to provide more scaffolding and more structure for those students to be able to produce the product. That others, I could give almost a blank page and they'd be able to create it all out of themselves.
Sometimes students learn as much from one another as they do from the teacher.
They were homogeneously grouped. They're all in the upper percentile of my class. They're engaging in the activities quite frequently, and they're usually challenging to each other. They motivate each other.
I think this ties in with the order of operations that we're working with today.
Number 4, you guys got 22, we got 10. Let's
Two
try.
very different answers.
You guys see what order your calculator did it in, and we'll see what order our calculator did it in.
But what's it getting from the first part of the problem?
The answer.
The answer, and it's taking that answer and using that answer for the
Second half of the problem.
second half of the problem. The group in the back of the room needs a little bit more structure and a little bit more push. For example, they were having difficulty with one of the problems, and they were having trouble initiating a discussion as to why the two calculators gave them different answers. So I felt that I needed to offer a real situation for them to be able to form a discussion around that so that they could start creating a concept of order of operations. Now let's think, if I'm paying my bills, I bought 3 pencils for $3. Let's do that first. And 5 erasers for $3. How much? The question is, how much am I going to pay? $24. $24. But according to Patrick, I'm going to give them $42. What do you think? How would you do it normally if you were in the store? How would you do it?
At $3, at 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus $3 for each pencil that I buy.
So instead of addition, what can we use for?
Or 3 times 3.
So you need to have $9 to buy your pencils. Okay. How much money do you need to have your erasers?
Erasers, 5 times 3.
The key is to focus on thinking and not on right or wrong answer. If I can make it objective and it's about this thinking, what do you think the thinking was that led to this answer? It takes the pressure off the individual student getting the right answer or the wrong answer. And if the student can see that, aha, this thinking led to that answer, but that it's not right, they'll be able to analyze and see what the problem was in the thinking.
If the students are having difficulty, Ms. Miller makes immediate adjustments.
If I see that the students had difficulty explaining why we need order of operations, I might do a follow-up lesson on the importance of following orders. For example, if I were baking a cake, what would the first thing be? For example, we might have mixed up instructions for something, like baking a cake, and they're going to have to put it in order and explain why that order is important.
So a teacher needs to design products that are going to give students very different learning styles and very different abilities opportunities both to master a really basic and essential content, but then also to carry that and to go further with it if they are interested and able.
That often means providing the students with varied exercises that purposely lead them to the educational goal. Not all students are good test takers, so teachers should provide varied assessment tools to allow all students to demonstrate what they have learned in a way that suits their personal learning styles.
As we conclude our discussion on order of operations,
A teacher who wants to use assessment to improve instruction will always look to students for guidance.
I'm going to give you guys your exit slip for today. There are 3 questions on here. Why is there a need for order of operations? Evaluate 85 plus 9 times 2. And then you have to fill in the missing operation in order to get the correct solution that I've identified.
Colleen Miller uses daily exit cards to gauge her effectiveness in the classroom and to tell students that their views matter. The exit card is a half-page questionnaire that tests the student's knowledge of the day's lesson.
The purpose of exit cards is for me to reassure the students as they leave my room that they did a good job. In addition, they are reassuring me that they have grasped onto the concept of the lesson. The exit slips have been very productive in my classrooms. We use them as learning tools as well. Awesome, Dale. Good job, Tiana. They also serve as a way for me to touch every student and say, good job, excellent job today. That way they just don't leave the room feeling frustrated or that they did an excellent job and they were not commented on it. Wow, they look wonderful, guys. Thanks, Andrew. It helps me to see them achieve success as well as modify my plans for the next class or for the next day as to what I could do differently and how we can play off of that.
So finding ways and finding a variety of opportunities for students to demonstrate their understanding is a crucial challenge that teachers face in our classrooms.
Thanks, Andrew. Wow. Good job, Kevin. And you're going to write the name of your main character?
Teachers need to monitor their students' progress on a daily basis. Using techniques such as observation, questioning, group work, discussion, and exit cards, teachers can gain critical insights into how well their students are learning the concepts they need to master. Then, teachers can use these insights to modify their instruction to ensure that it meets their students' learning needs. Students learn best when their teachers use classroom assessment to guide instruction.